Alrighty. Hello. Good morning. Hey guys. This is like lecture 8. That's the one before the last one. I'm just going backwards as I can. Um, Today we're going to be talking about can race be erased? This is a pretty interesting lecture. I don't know if you guys were there. I don't remember, but anyways, we're just talking about coalitional psych and social categorization. Um, what happens when there's less than two people or more than three people? It's kind of similar to the last, like the final lecture that the one that I did the video on before. Um, and that like we do talk about groups. I'll try to make this one quick, under an hour as well. All right. Here, you know what? I'm sorry, guys. Okay, and I'm gonna put Control Shift H away. Cool. All right. Um, all you need to for this one is just talking about how there's a group of monkeys and some monkeys know when to communicate and work with another, and then some group monkeys know when to fight each other. And it's just kind of weird how they know when to attack the first one, when to just be together in a group, walking to some place, and then the third one is relaxing with one another. Um, yeah, and so like the first one is attacking, the second and third are like basically cooperation. And so the thing that takes interest is the cooperation, less of the fighting. She defines war as coalitional aggression between two groups of individuals, and how rival coalitions usually involve us versus them mentality. Um, this sort of aggression, so, I don't know, sorry, coalition is rare amongst animals. Social insects use kin selection to mitigate free rider problems, aka like they know they come from the same queen bee or whatever, queen ant. Coalitions that include non-kin, humans, chimps, and maybe dolphins. They might be able to work well with someone who isn't their own family member. I don't know what that one is. Don't know what that one is. Uh, what are the cognitive mechanisms that make coalition action possible? And so the us versus them, the minimal group is the in-group favoritism. So like a smaller group, you fuck with that group, like us three. I'm assuming we fuck with one another. Um, and there's this cave experiment done by I think what was that one about? Oh yeah, so there's these robbers. They have a cave to go into. Um, but there's like these two groups of robbers. Um, Either way, it's like if they win something, one person wins something, the other person, if one group wins, the other group doesn't. And that sort of in-group versus out-group mentality, us versus them, can occur just with zero-sum allocation and adding any element of resource competition. And that sort of stress creates in-group, out-group problems. Um, I don't know what that one's about. Cite any of some Prado, I don't remember. Collective action, public good games, cooperating versus the punishment of free riders, which we'll go on more about later. Yeah, there's a bunch of programs that are evolved to regulate within group cooperation and between group conflict, which is important. These programs regulate motivations for participating cooperatively in coalitions, aka why do we feel entitled or encouraged to work with one another, especially with folks that we know, and why do we dislike folks that we feel are not a part of our group? Why do we do that? Um, oh, and then that part about like still organize much of human social life today, it as in like you know how we say like fuck UC or fuck Cal Poly UC rejects? Why? We're all the same humans, and yet still we have this in-group, out-group UCSB versus Cal Poly. Um, anyways, uh, there seems to be some sort of automatic categorization for in-group and out-group. We automatically think like, hey, this person is not part of my group, or I'm not part of their group, or etc. Um, and these measures rely on patterns and recall. So what is racial categorization? The whole thing of this lecture was to see if we can erase race, like if we could erase social, or if we could erase racial categorization. The tendency to notice and remember the race of each new individual we encounter. It's a form of social categorization, and it's a prerequisite for discriminating on the basis of race. Not discriminating like hatred, but just discriminating as in like difference. If people do categorize by race automatically and regardless of context, and if in-group favoritism and out-group discrimination are easy to elicit, aka it's something that's part of us and it's something that's easy to like bring up, then will this make racism impossible to eradicate? The idea of hatred towards race, and then also discrimination of race in a negative manner. Um, Unfortunately, for the past 20 years, there's not been much success, which is what she's talking about. These are the failed attempts to reduce categorization by race. Targets are discussing race relations versus race-neutral topic. Subject is black or white. Subject is led to believe she would soon be interacting with the targets. Subjects operate under cognitive load or not. Subject is warned that there will be a recall test. Uh, a competing dimension was included, aka they were black and female, or they were white and male, or like sex was a part of this. Attention is drawn to target's race. Pay attention to people's race, or away from it, pay attention to people's sex. No context found that would reduce categorization of race. This thing that was just said didn't do a good job at um, reducing racial categorization. Suggestions surfaced that the brain contains mechanisms designed for categorization for people by their race. But this is not plausible from an evolutionary perspective, and here's why. Our hunter-gatherer ancestors traveled mostly by foot, but we didn't get that fucking far a while ago. Rarely, if ever, encountered individuals of a different race. We never really saw, back then, never really saw that many folks um, who were a different race than us. It was usually just our own, and like at best, scare quotes, because race is a folk concept, not a biological concept. There's a greater geographical variation of many traits, but most genes are found in every population. Selection cannot favor a mechanism designed to encode and retrieve a dimension of the social world that did not exist, aka like how could like why would natural selection choose for something? Why would natural selection choose for racial discrimination if it's something that never really existed back then? Excuse me. Therefore, as a common theme in this class, categorizing by race must be a byproduct of a machinery that evolved for a different adaptive function. But why? Is not racial categorization not a byproduct of general visual perception mechanisms that categorize shape and color? Color is not categorized in an automatic and mandatory fashion. Shirt color is not categorized at all when it has no social significance. But when it has a group significance, we'll see what happens. Attentional factors that affect categorization by color and shape do not affect categorization by race, aka attending to sex and attending to race has no effect. There's no prototype effects on categorization. This is her hypothesis. Racial categorization is a byproduct of mechanisms designed for encoding and retrieving people's coalitional alliances, one component of an evolved coalitional psychology. Like, okay, so how she said before, shirt color not categorized at all when it has no social significance. Like when you're just wearing a color, it doesn't matter. But when you see someone wearing a Barcelona blue, like dark blue red shirt versus like an Argentina white and blue, it's like then you start to notice the differences because you're starting to the mind is like there's a difference here, not just because of the shirt color, but probably because there's a team, there's a coalitional difference between these individuals. Elements of coalitional psych: motivation to cooperate with in-group members, because it's usually better for you. Tracking who has contributed what, just to make sure there are no free riders, which you remember from the last thingy. Free rider detection categorization, punitive sentiments towards free riders, facility at solving coordination problems, conceptualizing outgroup as social agents with intentions. And she talks about coalitional theory of mind, like do groups think a certain way? They do kind of. You could talk about mob mentality, but that's not really what she was trying to get at. I think I don't remember. And alliance tracking machinery. The whole idea is just like there's reason for people to work with one another to achieve a common goal. There's a reason why you would check for certain alliances so that you see who's part of your group, who's not part of your group, who's doing work in your group, who's not doing work in your group. And then also just like conceptualizing outgroup as social agent with intentions. I think it's like what the opposing or what the group outside of your group is thinking of doing to you, to your group. That's what she means. I think coalitional theory of mind. Like do groups think in a certain way amongst itself and also I think amongst others. Alliance tracking machinery. Its function is to detect who is allied with whom. It's designed to infer alliances from patterns of cooperation and conflict. Standing shoulder to shoulder, supporting an argument, coordinated threat to a third party. Those are all examples. You see a kid just getting fucked on by like two other kids. You can tell like that kid that's getting fucked on, he is not friends with them at all. He's not friends with the bullies. But the two bullies that are working together, they're clearly friends at the very least. I don't know. There's a problem though. Behaviors that reveals one's coalition's alliances don't repeat all the time. So like you can't always like if you meet someone, you can't always tell who they're allied with just off of meeting them. Therefore, alliance tracking machinery should be designed to pick up on any more readily available cues that is correlated with patterns of cooperation and conflict, usually visual cues. Incidental correlates spatial distribution. Like for example, you see someone hang out with someone else, then you start to get an idea of like maybe they are like friends or part of all that. Accent, manner, speech, idioms. You can tell when someone's from Great Britain when they're like, "Oh, hey, bruv." It's like, okay, of course, this person probably like maybe is from Great Britain, therefore he might hang out with other folks in Great Britain, and it would confirm your hypothesis when you see two people and they both refer to each other as "Oi, bruv." It's like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's the gait. I had trouble understanding. Manner of dress. Just think of like the color of shirts in terms of team color, like on a soccer team or a football team. Intentional signals like when you see folks dab each other up, it's like clearly they're homies. And then insignia, tattoos, uniforms, and clan tartans. That's clan tartans. Like when like tribes would wear like certain face masks or color their face a certain way. Shared appearance cues often correlate with alliance behaviors. We can clearly tell these people are part of the team. They're opposing someone. Professor said this was a tribe in which they invited folks over to have them a separate tribe to have for dinner. Um, but then I think they lied to them, and then they ended up like they're like, "Hey, we're gonna go to war." It's like this is the largest war band of 30 folks. I don't know much after that. That's all I know. I think it's like Siberian folks, soldiers. You can tell, kind of, sorta. I mean, she's got a weird hat, but these men have like the same colored helmets, same getup, same weaponry. Yeah. Deadheads. You can tell these MFs are hippies, and then Republicans. I can't honestly. I thought these people were just part of a club, but I guess they're also. Professor said they're Republicans. I don't know. Anyways, alliance tracking machinery predicts design features. Activates when exposed to actual patterns of cooperation and competition. Those are the cues she was talking about. Tracks patterns of cooperation and competition to compute alliances. When patterns are detected, the cues are extracted, and then you start to make correlations. It boosts the salience of any cue predictive of coalitional affiliation. The presence of coalitional cues can then become signals that activate alliance tracking, and therefore it's like a feedback loop. Like, hey, I saw them dab each other up. Okay, now I'm recognizing I'm seeing them hang out more. Them being just two people. Oh, now they're going to the same club with one another. Oh, okay. Turns out they both speak Spanish to one another. It's like, okay, you start to really understand how, if folks are like, you start to understand why they're together, and also just why. I think that's all I'm gonna say. Anyways, we don't live in a racially integrated society, so there are patterns of cooperation and conflict correlated with race, a shared appearance cue. Is racial categorization a byproduct of alliance tracking machinery? To tell, we need experiments in which race is not correlated with coalitional membership. Two coalitions, two groups, each of which cooperates to achieve a common goal. We'll say two basketball teams. The common goal is to defeat the other team. Each team has two black members, two white members. So it goes BW and WB. Like so, one team has one black person, one white person. Another team has one white person, one black person. So race is not correlated. So like it's not like it's not like double. It's not like BB versus WW. It is BW versus BW. Race shouldn't matter. It's the team. Explain in this test we're going to explain to the subject that they had a fight last year. Now they're talking about it. So we're going to form impressions of these individuals. When race is not correlated with coalitional membership, do people automatically categorize coalitional membership? When there is a shared appearance cue, is coalitional categorization as strongly as race is viewed? When does race not predict coalition but other shared appearance cues? Does categorization by race by race diminish. Who said what paradigm? So targets have a conversation. Who said what in which sentence? Categorization via inferred from recall errors. So it's like we're gonna have a group of folks. First picture, hey, this person is saying you started the fight. This person's saying you gotta be kidding me, your guy punched first. This person said no way, we played it. Yeah, okay, like who said what? That's what it is. Now, 8 people total, 24 statements. Then our surprise recall task. We didn't tell it. They didn't say who it was. We were just gonna say who said what. So who said you guys started the fight? This is correct and just means jack shit. It doesn't give us anything. That's cool. What kind of mistakes will you make though? Mistakes tell us what you noticed and remembered about the speakers. Do you make mistakes based on race? You make mistakes based on team. So if you call his race, same race mistakes are more likely. Um, like it's if you were to choose this guy on who said you guys started the fight first, or choose this guy, it because you might have chosen race as something to recall better. But if you call his team, same team mistakes are probably more. You might he's wearing a red shirt. Whoever said it was wearing a red shirt. Therefore, is one of these four. Um, anyways, so there's a measure of categorization by coalition, same team errors minus different team errors, and then categorization by race, same race errors versus different race errors. All right. So same team errors versus. Just think of um, I believe if there's actually I'm not gonna I don't really remember that much. Data will be but the effect sizes which reflect how strongly people categorize by coalition or race. When subjects make more within categories areas than between category errors. So this guy Rob Kurzban, University of Pennsylvania, coalitions were always present, varied whether they were marked by a shared appearance cue. His categorization by race a byproduct of alliance tracking machinery. We'll check it out. So we had there's two conditions: a weak alliance cue and a strong alliance cue. So weak is verbal patterns of agreement and disagreement, no visual cues. AKA everyone dressed the same, but there's still like, who said what paradigm. And then there's a strong alliance cues, red versus yellow, verbal patterns of agreement and disagreement plus shirt color. Um, why do we add shirt color? It's easier to track when they're marked by shirt color, coalitional groups, making it easier to detect that race does not predict coalitional membership. But when shirt color has no social significance, it is not used at all. The color does not matter at that point. It does not decrease categorization by race. When race is not correlated with coalitional membership, is team coalition categorized without visual cues? Does team categorization increase when shirt color marks team membership? And does categorization via race decrease? So, so when race is not correlated with coalition members, basically, when we make it so that the coalitional membership is more important, is more salient, aka we add yellow and red, does discrimination via race decrease? And we compare that to a group that has no team color, and the only difference is color of skin. All right. So, um, when we do verbal only, no color, no shirt color, the effect size of categorization via coalition is low. Well, when it's with race, it's pretty damn high. Now, when we add the colors, the strength of categorization via coalition is stronger than it is with race. Whoa, whoa. I don't know what this purple one is. I don't know I think that's just control. I don't fucking know. Anyways, results coalitional membership was categorized even in the absence of a shared appearance cue. So like you could still kind of tell who was who. For example, in the first one, it was that guy that said you guys threw the punch. Second guy said no, you didn't. Third guy said no, like we played a clean fight. People can tell that the first and the third guy were part of the same team via verbal cues, which is interesting. Was kind of in the absence of a shared appearance cue. It wasn't as strong there. When there is a shared appearance cue, though, coalition was categorized as strongly as race usually is. Therefore, like we check back, the color did better than or I said as strongly, but we'll see. It does better. One race did not predict coalition, but other shared appearances cues did. Racial categorization diminished. So what's the alternative interpretation? What went wrong maybe? Was the decrease in racial categorization caused by a domain general constraint on attention? Did they have to pay attention to color, therefore shirt color, therefore they didn't pay attention to racial color? If that were true, it should be possible to categorize along two dimensions at very high levels. Test, so we do coalition and sex. So now we do sex. We do verbal cues. Um, categorization via sex is higher than coalition, but when we do sex and coalition, they're about the damn same. Racial categorization is reversible. 4 minutes of exposure to an alternative world in which race does not predict coalitional alliance was sufficient to reduce racial categorization. We see that here. The second we start introducing teams, race is no longer categorized, but instead shirt color or appearance cue. The brain is not designed to categorize race per se. It's designed to sift for coalitional alliances and pick up on any perceptual cue that predicts who is allied with whom. Racial categorization is a byproduct of cognitive programs designed for detecting coalitional alliances. However, do you have to have antagonism between groups to decrease racial categorization? Does there need to be an us versus them mentality? What if we just have a peaceful, cooperative, coalitional alliance and have that decrease racial categorization? Well, there's this guy named Dave Pietraszewski. Dave Pietraszewski. Um, Control condition. He had this experiment. No coalitions at all. How strongly is race categorized? Um, Coalitional conditions. Two charity organizations. Each cooperates to achieve a common goal. Habitat for Humanity versus Partners in Health. Build homes versus nutrition and agriculture. They're not against each other. They're for the same thing. They're very nice to one another. 3 sets of experiments. All targets are men, different in race. All targets are women, different in race. All targets are white, different in race. This is to check for. These two are to check just for sex and race. This one is just to check for sex. What happens when there are no coalitions? These are the questions that are being asked. Maybe the decrease in race was caused entirely by adding a difference in shirt. Maybe prior results had nothing to do with coalition alliances. When there are no coalitions, does adding a difference in shirt color influence categorization by race or sex? Um, so the first test measures categorization by race and by sex when sentences provide no information about coalitional alliances. And so we see, actually, this one's like, who said what doesn't mean, like, you can't really tell who's part of who, or which team is part of who. So when there are no coalitions, adding shirt color does not decrease categorization by race or sex. So we see this. There wasn't really that much of a big difference. There really not much of a big difference. Not really much of a big difference. This one's like kinda, but professor didn't really say much about it. So when there are no coalitions, adding shirt color does not decrease categorization by sex. Without coalitions, shirt color did not decrease categorization by race. Shows that race is not decreased by crossing it with just any kind of difference. Add support to the view that the decrease in racial categorization in basketball experiments was caused by enhancing people's ability to track coalitional cues. And so, like, we go back to here. Once we add shirt color, it doesn't really change that much. In this case, the the categorization via race. So in this case, and it like I'm gonna try to like explain this because I know this one was a bit difficult for me to understand. So in this case, there are no groups. There is no us versus them mentality. It's just all one big common group. Or like two groups, but they have the same goal. Um, to do good. And so when you had these shirt color, no shirt, no sorry, no shirt color, no shirt color, no shirt color. Um, there really wasn't a difference in how they were categorized um, via race or sex, and we see this here, like no difference, slight difference, but professor said no statistically significant difference. All right. So when coalitions are present versus absent, behavioral cues alone should be sufficient to elicit categorization by coalition and decrease categorization by race. Gray shirt condition tests this. Compare categorization by race when coalitions are present versus absent. So absent is the baseline condition. Anyway, okay, we'll go back here. So this one, charity conditions. This is the verbal stuff again. So coalition and general sentences for each speaker. Coalitional sentences show which group the speaker belongs to. You know, like, hey, I'm for nutrition and stuff. That's partners versus general. Um, uh, we've all had the same minimum level of training. All you need to know is that coalitional just tells you which group they are. General could have been said by either group. Does retrieval context matter? Everyone belongs to many different coalitions. Um, but which coalition is relevant now? Context should determine how strongly a particular coalition membership is retrieved. To test selective retrieval, vary which sentences are present at recall. So coalitional versus general conditions. So all sentences at recall are coalitional, aka like when they tell the people to recall, they're all sentences that like clearly tell who is part of who, which group is part of who. Um, This context implies that difference in group membership are relevant to speakers. Alliance system, who is in which group? Okay. And now this is the general. So we have them recall sentences that had nothing to do about like which group they were. It could have been said by both groups. All right. This implies that doing charitable work is relevant to the speakers, but not their group membership. No need to retrieve group membership in this case because they're just general sentences. These verbal cues mean jack shit about what group they are. All right. Now, when there is no conflict, do people categorize by coalition? If so, does this decrease racial categorization? Does retrieval context matter? Does it matter when someone is told to recall sentences that clearly discriminate which group is in which group? Or is there any effect of when it's just a general sentence that can't really tell? Sorry, does recall matter when the sentences that are asked to be recalled are ones that are not indicative of groups or correlational membership? So, okay, so when there's behavioral cues only, no shirt color, we're just asking the person to recall certain sentences. When it's general sentence recall, um, sex is not really, there's not really big effect. Um, but when there are coalitional sentences, uh, there's a high effect size. There's more recallability. Um, Now when it's race male, not that much general sentence, high coalitional sentence. That's retrieved more. And then actually no, I think it's female male. Anyways, all you need to know is that coalition, like when people are told to remember sentences that can tell you which group is part of which group, it's all the same. It's all relatively the same. Sex doesn't matter. Race/sex doesn't matter. Race/sex doesn't really. For some odd reason, general a little bit more. Actually, hopefully she did, but not really big of an effect. However, the second you start adding shirt color, aka visual cues, the strength of recall and understanding which group is which goes way up higher. Especially for because then the cues don't matter in terms of general. You can just see, okay, this person is part of this group. What they're saying doesn't mean jack shit in terms of what group they are, but I can see they're wearing a different shirt color. Um, but still, sex doesn't matter. Race and certain sexes doesn't really have an effect. I don't know why she did this. Anyways, okay, yeah. So like, that's kind of fucked. I don't know. I'm not gonna explain that. So what about categorization by sex? So we manipulate coalitional variables that regulate categorization by race. This is expected if race is categorized because it is an alliance cue. Does manipulating coalitional variables regulate categorization by sex? So this whole time we've been trying to categorize via verbal cues, shared appearance cues, and also racial cues. But can we categorize via sex? Sex is categorized because it supports inferences across many domains. It does not uh, um, across many domains, not because it is alliance cue. Um, so like when we look at sex, it's not to tell which group is part of which group, or if this man or woman is part of a certain group, because that sex shouldn't really matter much in terms, usually in terms of certain coalitional groups, because it, it has like better, it has more inferences across other things in life, not just alliance keys. All right. Categorizing by sex should not be as strongly regulated by alliance keys. So mixed sex coalitions, atom colors. And so When there's no group, or sorry, when there's no colors, when there's coalitions are absent, this is baseline. When coalitions are present and we have that general versus coalitional, same thing. Looks like sex does not have an effect, or there is less variation in categorization via sex, aka like it's not something that's really accounted for. Um, and then same thing, add shirt color doesn't change categorization via sex. It's usually just um, oh yeah, it just has no effect in this case. And so we compare it. Baseline, no color, color, same effect. When we have them, we're called general sentences. When we have the subject, we're called general sentences about who said what. Like I said, there's no us versus them mentality. It's all one common goal. Um, the strength of recall for general sentences is about the same if there are visual cues, and if there aren't visual cues in mixed sex coalitional groups. And then we ask them to recall coalitional sentences, like sentences that clearly tell that they are part of different groups, they're part of yellow or red team. Um, and categorization via sex is the same. There's no difference. So, can race be erased in a world of cooperative coalitions? Yes, perhaps even more effectively. Domain specificity and categorization. A single process cannot account for social categorization by race and sex, as categories, race and sex are not psychologically equivalent. Coalitions/race are arbitrary set of categories. They encode alliances. Sex is not. You don't really encode sex via alliance. I mean, you could do like if it was a woman's female team or a female soccer team. Yeah, but instead you like if it's you do like visual cues. You would do other cues. You wouldn't really do sex. Um, Automatic encoding is high across social context. Is categorization by sex mandatory? At least not influenced by alliance variables the way that race is. So conclusions. Coalitional tracking psychology mechanisms can be engaged without conflict or antagonism. You can tell when certain groups are part of one another, when the groups don't have to be fighting. You can tell when groups are like this like Red Cross versus like WHO. They both have the common goal of saving humanity. I don't know, maybe, but you can tell that there's a difference between them. Um, Especially with verbal cues and nonverbal cues. Pro-social slash cooperative coalitions are sufficient to decrease categorization via race. Um, and then racial categorization is not mandatory. And we just saw that with the shirt color. Like the second you add shirt color, categorization via race decreases. It's more categorization via visual cues, aka shirt color. Further evidence that categorizing people's race is a byproduct of alliance tracking machinery. Um, Racial discrimination exists because we see differences, and honestly, that one difference might just be color of skin. Not entirely sure, but that's what we're seeing. Anyways, here's like a really cool like flow chart. So there's these cues, the cue monitoring system, acts of alliance. So we see patterns of cooperation, patterns of competition. Then there's shared appearance cues. We see coalitional markers, accent, phenotype, etc. So now we're trying to map the coalition. So we have a covariance detector, coalition set, assignment and encoding, us, them, them too. Uh, so we see like if they are part of us, if they are part of my group, well, I will increase my welfare trade-off ratio. Basically, if I see that they're part of my group, I will make sure that their welfare is good. Like I will help them out more, even at the cost of my own welfare. And so these programs guiding altruistic behavior uh, create in-group favoritism and out-group indifference. So like if I don't know, one of you guys were like, hey, I'm failing this class. Can you help me? You know what? Because we were part of the same group, because coworkers, friends, etc. I feel that wellness trade-off ratio. It's a paper I read. It's a pretty good paper. You guys should read it. She has it on the Lecture space, because we are of the same group. In my eyes, there's this thing called the wellness trade-off ratio. How much am I willing to work with you, and this ratio of wellness between you and I, resources, happiness, healthiness. And so if you treat me like shit, I am totally comfortable with having my wellness really high and not giving you anything, and your wellness being really low. Let's say you treat me like shit and you're dying, and I know you treat me like shit. I don't care. I'm I'm not obliged to help you at all. But let's say you're a really good friend of mine, and I'm doing good, but you're doing bad. You know what? I can reduce some of my own wellness and give you some resources, some help to bring you up. Um, that's kind of welfare. That's kind of like it, but just read the paper. There's more about it. I just gave you like a really quick synopsis. Um, Anyways, so yeah, that's where we see in-group favoritism and out-group indifference. Versus them, if we don't like them, then there's out-group indifference. We don't care about their welfare as much as we do ours. Programs motivated coalitional behavior. So we coordinate and cooperate with in-group members. Um, we punish free riders within our own group, but we also have out-group hostility and violence. Um, yeah, so if we like them, but they're not working with us, we're gonna punish them. If we don't like them, we're just going to be hostile and violent towards outgroup individuals. General conclusions. Coalitional psych evolved to regulate within group cooperation and between group conflict, in group, out group literature, social. Yeah. Alliance tracking machinery is designed to compute who is allied with whom, looks for patterns of cooperation, competition, boosts salience of cues correlated with cooperation and competition. Categorization by people by their race is a byproduct of alliance tracking machinery and easily reversed by manipulating alliance patterns. I don't know what the fuck that is. And we're done. Thank you for watching. Take care. Brush your hair. That's it. Bye.